Good morning, friends. I'll move this up here. This morning, I do want to try and bring a bigger picture of that picture that Pam shared of this big ship coming alongside. So often we get caught in the small, and I want us to broaden our vision and our kind of view of what we're part of as God's children. So before we get too serious, I noticed this morning that I'm twinning with Tate this morning. Where's Tate? Where's Tate gone? He's gone to the bathroom. When he comes out, you'll be able to see. We're wearing exactly the same shirt, which I always find encouraging. I haven't missed the mark so much that someone else chose the same thing as me. You can have a little look around now. See if there's anyone that's wearing a similar colour, similar outfit to you. Just sort of go, we got it to this morning. There's a few around that. It's good. I always get encouraged. Anyway, so my wife and I named our son Eden. And many of you know that this comes from the Bible. It's the garden, which actually means delight. And don't worry, son, I'm not going to get you to do anything at all. Relax. And it's from the original scene, the original location of where man was with God. And it was perfect. It was harmony. Sin hadn't entered and spoilt and corrupted this place. God, in fact, after he created everything, he said, he saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Every tree that is pleasant to the sight and is good for food. So, God, there was crystal rivers, clear water flowing in every direction. Hey! Come on. We nailed it this morning. Focus. Crystal clear rivers flowed in every direction from this garden. And Adam and Eve were instructed to work the land and to keep it. So that's Eden. Now I have a grandson called Zion, which many of you may or may not know is also from the Bible. And it's mentioned, and it refers to the new heavenly Jerusalem. Or as John Mark Comer, an author, says, he calls it the Garden City. So it's how the garden's taken and then been taken by and harnessed by humankind and made into this beautiful city. It's the utopia of God and man cohabiting together in perfect harmony. And everything is channeled towards glorifying God and being with one another. It's a wonderful vision. And I want us to live carrying this vision of looking at the reflections of the garden, but also, we're going to look in a minute, at the temple that Solomon built, the projections of what is to come. So there's reflections back and projections forward of what is to come and what we can expect to enjoy. So this morning we're going to look at Solomon building the temple, and the passage comes from 1 Kings 5-8. And I hope we can get this bigger picture of the future of heaven and earth joining together and the consummation of time. And so we're going to look at certain things that we can pull out from the temple building and the people building the temple that I think will help us to move forward, but also looking at unity, help us to draw us to one another as we hold and cling to this wonderful vision of God's dwelling place among the people, and he will dwell with them. It comes from Revelation 28. God's dwelling place will be among the people, and he will dwell with them. So sadly, the history of humankind has been fluctuations and cycles of division and unity, separation and then reconciliation. But we need to continue to hold on to the promise that God will bring things together in time. So as we look at Solomon building the temple, we want to go back 480 years before Solomon built the temple. Moses was leading out the people from Egypt under slavery. And the people all came together. But as soon as they came out, Moses fairly swiftly died after that. And then the people started not to follow God's commands and reject God. And it's at that point they started to scatter. And it talks about all these different groups of people, the tribes of Judah, 12 of them just scattering across all of Israel. And this was fulfillment of a promise that Jesus, in Leviticus it says, and when they rebelled, I will scatter you among the nations. So these 12 different tribes settled in different regions or states across Israel, separate from one another. So there was disunity. But then after a period of judges coming in and ruling the land and kind of trying to spiritually lead people, they were largely unsuccessful. But then a moment came in history where King David came and he reigned. And although there were years of battles and wars and trying to take land and strategic alliances, one thing did happen. He managed to bring unity back to all these separate tribes, and they came under his reign and came under his rule. So there was some unity for some time. So my first point is, we need to fight for unity. It's not just a given. Just because we call ourselves Christians, we can't assume they're all going to get on. They're all going to have the same vision. We need to fight for it. It's a battle. We can't rest and assume this is something automatic that we're going to get. I believe unity is won through resistance and engagement. And we will get lots of different battles coming from lots of different angles to try and separate and divide us. Largely from within, from our own selfish hearts, our own prideful selves. There's going to be a battle there that needs to be fought. But also, the enemy is going to try and deceive us and lure us away and divide the church by feeding us lies. Whoa! That's my nan just arrived. So firstly ourselves, secondly the enemy, but also the world. There's going to be pressures from the world, the sinful world. There's going to be trying to infiltrate and divide and give us this is the way we should live. This is what true success looks like. And values and different world idols will start to creep into the church, into our relationships, into the leadership, and divide us. So we must put on the armor of God and stand firm. It's a battle. The account of Solomon building the temple is found in, if you want to follow, I've got a little bit of the passage, is in 1 Kings chapter 5 to 8. We're not going to read all those chapters, and I'm just going to reference different points throughout the talk today. But I'm going to particularly pick up towards the end, after the temple had been built, the completion of the temple, and Solomon's just praying. I think there was an image of the temple. You can go to the next slide. So this is an image of the temple, and then we'll read an extract of the blessing or exhortation that is given just towards the end. Okay, we'll read that now. So 1 Kings 8, and we'll start from verse 54. When Solomon had finished all these prayers and the supplications to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out toward heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he had promised. Not one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in obedience to him and keep the commands, decrees, laws he has given or gave our ancestors. And may these words of mine, which I've prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, and that he may uphold the cause of his servant and cause of his people Israel according to each day's need, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God and that there is no other. And may your hearts be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands at this time. I've got some more verses, but I'm going to stop there. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of our singing this morning is along these lines about just receiving his promise, his love, and submitting ourselves to him, kneeling before him, lifting our hands before him in submission, which we'll come to in a minute. Our Father often encourages communities of faith to share a vision, and a vision of hope, and to be united by a beautiful picture of the future. And I want to draw out some key things which I think are evident in this time of history, where God's people did know a unique kind of peace and prosperity whilst being united by a promise. So that's the first thing I'm going to bring, a community living with a promise. Kings 6:12 says this: "As for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, observe my laws, and keep all my commands and obey them, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to David your father." And this is the promise: "And I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people Israel." I want to encourage us to come together under a united promise and vision of a restored universe, of a new heaven and a new earth. This is what we're working towards, where man walks with God in perfect harmony forever. This is what we are working towards. When we get weary of the work here on earth, hold this promise. When we hit obstacles, remember the promise. When life gets really tough, and it does, hold on to the promise. I believe if we do this, we'll joyfully motivate us to keep going and to continue. Through history, not one of his promises has ever failed. We sing, don't we? You can finish it if you want to. He's faithful through generations, so why would he fail now? He won't. No one knew it, did they? He won't. He's not going to fail now. He won't fail. He will be faithful to his promises. So a community living with a promise, a community that builds on the unity of previous generations. Now, I've taken this from a bit earlier in the passage, but we know that David's son is Solomon. So David went before and he succeeded him as king. So Solomon succeeded David as king. And he built on what his father was already establishing. So David was making alliances and developing good relationships internationally with different people, different leaders, different kings throughout Israel. And Solomon continued to do that. He showed wise and graciousness and just generosity to one particular king, King Hiram, king of Tyre. And by him doing that, this king supplied all the cedar to build the temple. And we need to do that here in our context. And I've had the privilege of building on what people have done and laid before me. I like to think of it sometimes as we kind of build on, people's ceilings then become our floors, and then we carry on building, don't we? And so Andrew Ryland, some of you may know, many of you won't know here actually, he was the pastor of this church before me, and he worked hard at establishing relationships with all the people of this community. And one of the things is I'm just going to get something. One of the things is, let's see. is the local churches come together, South Runnymede churches. And I was elected as a kind of secretary of this group of churches. And if I look, we get given this Bible, and then at the front of the Bible, it's back in 1984, it was called Chertsey and District Council of Churches, so all the local churches. And then they changed it to Addleston Fellowship of Churches, all the same thing, Addleston Fellowship of Churches in 1990. But then we go to what we call it now, South Runnymede Churches. We're thinking of changing it again, just for the sake of it. South Runnymede Churches, Andrew Ryland. So he was leading this group of churches as we come together and encourage and pray and have faith for what God's going to do in this community. And so Andrew Ryland, between 2007 and 2010, he signs this little Good News Bible. And then they nominated me. So since 2022, I was squiggled in here. And so it's exciting, isn't it, that we can build on what God is doing amongst us. I tell you that because many of you won't know that we meet as leaders of the local area and come together and pray and share gossip. And no, we just enjoy fellowship and love and support and encouragement. And it's a precious, precious thing. I know many of these guys, this is a lifeline for them, that are isolated in leadership. And so, yeah, I share that with you. So we want to continue to build on what previous generations have built. We are blessed as a church that we have maybe four different generations of different families that have been here, and we can see God's faithfulness through the generations. Okay. So yeah, where you see favour from previous relationships, nurture them, press into them, build on them. A community of work, working hard together for a common purpose. Believe it or not, work is not from the devil. It's not. It's from God. It's from God. He told Adam and Eve to work the garden. This is a good biblical thing. So in this time of Solomon, forced labour was common in that day. A lot of these people had come from forced labour under Egypt. But these labourers were made up of now free Israelites who worked together not like slaves, but appreciated craftsmen who did shift work of one in every 3 months. And then they had 2 months holiday with family. Wow. That sounds a good deal, doesn't it? So shall I read it, if you don't believe me? 1 Kings 5:13. King Solomon conscripted labourers from all Israel. It wasn't just a small group, it was all Israel, coming together, a community of workers. 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month. So they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home on holiday. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stonecutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workers. The workforce was made up of many different tribes that were once scattered, but now they're working together in unity. It's beautiful, isn't it? If you want to feel connected, here, if you want to know unity here, work. Be involved. Get involved. We've actually got a form that says get involved. There's so many different ways. Believe it or not, this doesn't just pop up magically. You know, God's elves come out and put the chairs out. And it doesn't happen. People work. And I encourage you, if you want to be part of this loving community, be involved in different ways. There's so many different ways. Don't come to me after and say, I'd like to be involved, how can I be involved? Because that will really throw me and I won't be able to know on the spot how you can be involved. I prefer it if you say, I want to be involved in this way, can I do that? Or don't need to come to me, come to anyone, speak to anyone. Just get involved. It's wonderful as we work together. Just a little aside. Solomon spent 7 years building this temple. 7 years. But later in chapter 7, it says, it took 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. We can make of that as we will, but what I want to just throw out there. And that could be for many different reasons. The workers could have got bored, and, or he could have not got the workers to build his own temple, but his own palace. But do we spend more time in building our own temples than building a place where God wants to take up residence? Building a space where he wants to abide amongst us? Or what we're building, is it for his praise and for his glory, for his fame? Solomon was able to say, I have built a house, not for my own name, but for the name of the Lord God of Israel. Can we say that too? Fourthly, a community of rest. So there's work, but there's also rest. Both are God-given. Both are a gift from God. Those that rest well actually honour God's design and purpose and rhythm of how to thrive here on earth. Notice in Solomon's closing prayer, you might be able to find it, it's 8:56. It says, he prioritizes praising God for the rest that he receives, not for the work. This was the first thing he said. Praise be to the Lord who has given rest to his people, Israel, just as he promised. We need to grasp that. We need to remember that after 6 days of God working and creating and forming the universe, what did he do on the seventh day? He rested. If it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for us. Have you ever taken on a project like that? We need to rest. This culture that we live in is just obsessed with manufacture and production and doing stuff. And we are to work, as I said, but make sure we have a healthy rhythm of Sabbath rest where your soul is restored, where you're spiritually, physically, emotionally refreshed. Applaud people that rest well in this community. It's something to be mimicked and copied. We're to step back and enjoy the fruit of our labours. A community of prayer. The extract that we read came from the end of Solomon's majestic prayer of dedication of the temple. And he did that before all the people. Verse 22, I think of chapter 8, it says, Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in front of the whole assembly of Israel. So this wasn't just a quiet prayer. This was in front of the whole community. And he was acknowledging God's faithfulness in the completion of the temple. And so from day one, kind of opening day of the temple, he established it as a house of prayer. This was crucial. This was a rock in the buckets. And verse 54, it says, as a few people I noticed this morning, it says of him, he'd been kneeling with his hands spread out towards heaven. This is a posture I want this body, I'm talking about this body, this church, to have. Kneeling with our hands lifted to heaven. It says so much about where our hearts are. We humbly come. We know our frailty, we know our weakness, but we're lifting our hands to the King of Kings, the one all-powerful, who will supply all our needs, who will deliver us, whose power is sufficient for each one of us. Let this be our posture. He was fulfilling Isaiah's prophecy when he said, These I will bring to my holy mountain, this is Jerusalem, and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. So as the nations, as the tribes came, this was being fulfilled. Yeah, so this wasn't a private prayer. This was a community prayer. This was a congregational prayer, a family gathering together. It was a house of prayer. So my encouragement to you is let's not stop meeting together to pray. It unites people. I've known that has been my story. When I pray with brothers and sisters, it unites our heart, our faith, our vision, and does something that no other activity here on earth can do. So join with people and pray with people. Okay. Excuse me one moment. A community of obedience. John 14 says, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. If you love me, you'll obey my commands. Obedience is the kind of currency of love in God's book. This is how we show our love to him, obedience. So as we saw earlier, where there was disobedience in the different tribes, it actually, their collective disobedience scattered them. I believe the reverse is also true. Collective obedience gathers people and unites people. Keeping God's commandments is better and more pleasing to him than anything else we can do, than building churches. I believe it's really important that during working hard on things for the Lord, for his kingdom, we need to realize that that isn't the most important thing. It's still obeying his commands. It's still our character formation. It's still how are we becoming more Christ-like. This is what God looks at. And we can think of that, especially now as we're working on a big project. We must remember that character refinement is more important in the working. That's what God is looking for, our obedience. And the thing is, character formation and becoming more Christ-like is done best in community. It's not, it's because it's harder, because we're surrounded by people who aren't like us and don't have the same views. So it's in the working, in the doing, in the rubbing up alongside people. That's where God really works on us. And so loving God and loving your neighbour is so linked. You know, we can't separate them. They go hand in hand. That's where we work out how to be patient in our love, how to be forgiving and kind and honouring one another. I like the way the Message puts 1 Kings 6:11. The word of God came to Solomon saying, about this temple you are building, emphasis by me, what's important is that you live the way I've set out for you to do and what I tell you to do, following my instructions carefully and obediently. So he's just saying, about this temple, yeah, it's great and it's my plan, but what's important is that you live the way I've set out for you to do and what I tell you to do. Then I will complete the promise I made to David your father. I'll personally take up my residence among the Israelites. I won't desert the people, Israel. Eighthly, a community of praise. I believe together we need to be celebrating and being so grateful and thankful and feasting together. This is good. This is a good thing. These guys celebrated and had a festival for about 2 weeks, I think. 865. So Solomon observed the festival at that time, and all Israel with him, a vast assembly, people from Lebo Hamath and Tawadi of Egypt. They celebrated it before the Lord our God for 7 days and 7 more days, 14 days in all. We need to be a people that's rejoicing and coming and going and just enjoying the goodness of God together. We don't want to be those that are solemn. We want to be those that celebrate his faithfulness through the generations, celebrating his good gifts, celebrating his promised presence, celebrating one another. Let's be a community of praise. So as I draw things to a close, I just want to, I've tried to show you that the temple is, that Solomon built, it's more than just a building. It's more than just a place of worship. It's a model of the universe, of how it should be. Just like Eden was the intended paradise where God and man could live and walk together in harmony. So the pattern Solomon, you could probably pull up the first picture of the pattern Solomon followed mirrored the beauty of Eden. We can see that. 1 Kings 6:29, on the walls, all around the temple, I don't know if you can see those, all around the temple, in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and the outer rooms of the temple with gold. Solomon would spare no expense, even gold underfoot. That was the carpet. Suitable for a king. So you can see this. And then there's large basins filled with water, a big sea of water there, reflecting Eden with the rivers flowing out. Similar to the two cherubim that you can probably see in the back there. With the wings spread out at the entrance to the presence of the temple. That was also in Eden, wasn't it? Guarding the entrance of the garden. So it's just reflecting back to Eden. So I believe this, as I said, reflects back to what Eden was, but also projects forward to what we can expect, the future promise. So the temple we see here, but actually when we get into the New Testament, Jesus says, I'm the temple. He says in John 2:21, destroy this temple, speaking of his body, and in 3 days I will raise it up. So he was the temple. So there's different models of the temple that we can see. Eden, Solomon's temple, Jesus, and then we. We are the temple. We are the temple. It says this. So let me read this. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know and understand that you, the church, are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells permanently in you, collectively and individually? So if we have made Jesus the center of our lives, we become representations of Eden. We carry the presence, like the tabernacle, like the temple. As we live and cohabit with Christ together, we're carrying a temple to people, that people might see this new promise. We are the latest model of the temple. And this is God's plan. 1 Corinthians 3:9, also in the Amplified, I think we might have it. We do, great. For we are God's fellow workers, his servants working together. You are God's cultivated field, his garden, his vineyard, God's building. There's two images. You can see there, the garden and the temple. This is who we are, friends. We are part of his sovereign plan to display how the universe should be here on earth. We're like handcrafted bricks. That's all they did. They crafted the stones to build the temple off-site, getting them to align and work perfectly together. We are like these individually cut stone, skillfully prepared to bring his presence to the center of creation. Jerusalem was at the center, on a hill. That was where people could see it. And I believe today that you and me are also to be at the center of creation. We're here at the center of this high street, bringing the presence. Wow, that's a crazy ringtone, isn't it? That would really freak me out. I feel stressed. We're here to bring his presence to the center of creation, here in the middle of Guildford Street. Isn't it a wonderful image? Not on a hill in Jerusalem, but here. We are bringing the temple of God here. And it's built together. The unified church is its temple. Individually, every believer is a living temple in whom the Spirit of God dwells, 1 Corinthians 3:16. But together, the unified church, as we come together, not just us, but the local church, as we come together, we're a temple growing to be a holy temple in the Lord. It says this in Ephesians. Built up of every nationality, of culture, background, all brought together. So fulfilled in Zion, Eden, Zion, the holy garden city, where ultimately heaven and earth are joined together with all people from every nation who choose to follow him. It's not automatic. We need to choose to follow him and submit to him. We will all be restored in perfect unity. So where this permanent, everlasting temple is, in Zion, is actually Jesus. We'll read it in a minute from Revelation. Jesus is the temple, the immovable, unchanging temple. It's going to be fixed. His presence and his promise will be fully fulfilled. The streets of the New Jerusalem, foreshadowed by the flooring of the temple, they're going to be streets of pure gold on the floor. And the cherubim will be there attending the throne of glory, as we've seen before. Let me read to you Revelation 21. This is an image that John had. You can shut your eyes. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be them, and we be their God. He will wipe away every tear. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." A bit later, I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. Then we drop down to the next chapter where it talks about Eden being restored. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. I invite us all to be a community on a mission from Eden to Zion, carrying the temple in ourselves and this vision with ourselves, that God's dwelling place will be among his people. Amen.